It has been great to be a part of this training. Thank you so much, Sister Jennifer, for that wonderful presentation of time management. And God has blessed us with a great mission personally and as a church. And He's given us life and time to fulfill that mission. And some of those things that Sister Jennifer talked about, I hope are a good motivator for us, or maybe a reminder. I know that sometimes when I listen to these lessons, I've heard them before, but sometimes you kind of forget about them. You get in a routine of the way you do things. And then when you hear a lesson like this, you go, wait a second, why don't I do that anymore? I used to do that. I used to be organized in that way. Why did I stop that? And so I think these are some great reminders for us. And I just want to encourage you not to try to do everything at once. Just try to maybe pick one thing that she talked about and implement. That's the same thing for all the workshops we do. Just try to find one thing to start with and go from there. We're going to be on lesson number 4. So if you have your notebook, you can go ahead and get that. Lesson number 4 on page number 19. Leadership and relationships. They make me or break me. They make me or they break me. I heard about this Roman leader. His name was Emperor Frederick. He ruled the Roman Empire in the 13th century, and he was a curious guy, and he was curious about language because he saw various languages around the known world, and there was always debate about which language was best, which language was the very first language. In fact, he and some of his scientists, I guess you could call them, they were convinced that people were born with an original language, that the language you speak obviously is a language that you learn, that people teach you, but we're all, he thought, born with a language. And so he was curious, which language would that be? Were people originally born with the ability to speak Hebrew? Was it Greek? Was it Latin? And so he put together this horrible experiment to try to figure out which is the language, the original language that people are born with. And so he took a group of babies. As soon as they were born, he isolated them from everybody, even from themselves. And these babies, they heard no voices. They heard no communication verbally. And so they were isolated. The thought was, if you don't hear another language, then you're going to start speaking the original language you had. Well, after 3 months, all of those babies were dead. It's terrible, it's tragic. But without that human interaction, without that relationship, they died. And I think that's really indicative of who we are as people. We need relationships. Without personal contact, we've seen during COVID how hard it's been to be isolated in our homes, to be isolated from other people, how frustrating that is to be alone. Many people are struggling with loneliness now. Relationships are so key for us as individuals and for us, obviously, as the church and leaders. Jesus taught us that the kingdom of God is built on relationships. What separates us from the other religions of the world is that our faith is built on relationships. When Jesus was asked to summarize the most important commands, what did he say? He says, love your God and love others, a vertical relationship and a horizontal relationship. For Christian leaders, we cannot assume that we are successful unless we master the art of leading healthy relationships. People won't follow you and I if they cannot get along with us, if they cannot relate to us. Relationships are key. I heard a leader say one time, hopefully he was joking. He said, I love God and I love my ministry, but it's people that I can't stand. Well, obviously there's a problem there, right? Because ministry obviously entails people. We are in the people business, whether we are in ministry, whether we're leading in the secular context. Leadership really is so intertwined with relationship. Now, let's look at the power of perspective, because our perspective as we enter into relationships, it's crucial on how that relationship goes, whether it succeeds, whether it fails. Many times or often, the way that we our perspective of other people, it impacts the way that we interact with them. Also, our perspective of ourselves, our self-esteem, our self-concept affects the way that we see others, the way that we interact with others. Let's look at a couple of questions as we start this lesson. Under the power of perspective, number one, how do I see myself? If the way that I see myself impacts the way I see others, then obviously we need to know, how do I see myself? When I look in the mirror, what do I see? Do I like what I see? Am I frustrated at what I see? Do I see strengths, or do I just see weaknesses? Do I see somebody who's optimistic or somebody who is more pessimistic? Do I see somebody of faith or somebody who's not? What do I see when I look at myself? Secondly, how do others see me? When the people that I lead, the people at the office, the people at the church, the people in the ministries I'm involved in, when they look at me, what do they see? Do they see the real me? Many of us were really good at wearing those masks over who we are. We have an image we want to portray. We don't often want them to see the real us. When people see us, what do they see? And then also, how do I see others? When I look at the people that I lead, when I look at the people that I interact with, what's my perspective of them? A story that we've grown up hearing, knowing, is the story of the Good Samaritan. We all, I'm sure, all know this story that Jesus told to make a very important point. The story is of this man who's taking this journey through this very dangerous area, and as he's traveling, he is attacked by robbers. And these robbers, they take all that he has, they beat him and leave him there to die. But you know what happens next, right? As he's laying there injured, thinking he's probably going to die, along comes a religious leader. And I'm sure he thinks, oh, I'm sure this religious leader is going to stop and help me. He's a godly person. He's a God-fearer. Surely he'll stop. But we know how this religious leader just passed on by without helping. And then following that religious leader is another religious leader. And this one too passes by. And then finally, a third person comes by. But this injured man who was a Jew sees that this man coming towards him is a Samaritan, the Jews' enemies. Well, surely this man is not going to stop and help, but surprise of all surprises, this Samaritan stops and helps. Now, we know the story, but I want us to look at the story from the perspective of each of those main characters towards the man who, the traveler. The robbers, when they looked at that man, that traveler, what they saw was a person to exploit. Here's somebody we can get something from. We can get something from him. The religious leaders, when they saw this traveler as a problem to avoid. They didn't want to get their hands dirty. They didn't want to mess with issues of purity. Maybe it's dangerous to stop to help. This was a problem to avoid. But that Samaritan, when that Samaritan looked at this man, this Jew, this traveler, what did he see? Did he see an enemy? No, he saw a person to love. And his perspective towards that person, towards that man, it influenced, it impacted what he did next by stopping, helping, and make sure this man was going to be okay. He even paid for his care. Our perspective, it influences, it impacts the way that we interact, the way that we work with, the way that we minister, the way that we lead. I think it's so important that we are very aware of the power of our perspective. And if we're looking at people in the wrong way, we need to make some changes. Whether is this a person to exploit, a problem to avoid, or someone to love. Let's look at the role of responsibility. Romans 12:18 tells us, if possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with everyone. Be at peace with everyone. And I know that's a tall order, to be at peace with everyone. It seems like there are some people that it's just so hard to get along with. There's some people just frustrate us. I know that it can be very hard, and it's important to remember this. I heard this, I kind of got a chuckle. Everyone brings joy. Did you realize that? Every person brings joy. Some people bring joy when they arrive. Other people bring joy when they leave. But everybody has the option of the opportunity to bring joy. Moving along here, the key to successful relationship is responsibility. Leaders must take responsibility to develop strong, healthy relationships in the context of their life, in the context of ministry, in the context of leadership. If we're going to have healthy, successful relationships, there's some things that we need to affirm, some things that we need to take responsibility for. Let's look at these. Number one, I am responsible for how I treat others. It's not their, regardless of what they do or what they don't do, what they say or what they don't say, they should not have the power over us to determine what we do, how we treat them, whether they're nice or not nice, whether they cut us off in traffic, whether they let us into traffic. Our response to them should not be based on their action. We have the control to, or the decision to make on how we're going to respond to that. I choose my response. Look at Jesus. Jesus was ridiculed. He was made fun of. He was beaten. He was crucified. And in the midst of all that, he had the power to bring about retribution upon those people. But what did he do? He opened his arms. He forgave them. He died for them. We have the option to choose how we're going to treat others. Number two, I am not always responsible for how others treat me. I'm not always responsible for how others treat me. We only have so much influence over people. They have to choose how they're going to respond, how they're going to treat me. I can work very hard. I can try to please people. I can try to make all the right decisions, but that doesn't guarantee that they're going to treat me well. Jesus, the most kind person ever to walk the earth, the most loving person. But not everybody treated him well. People treated him badly as well. And if it happened to Jesus, of course it's going to happen to us. Number three, I will take the high road and lead people well by choice, not by reaction. I'm going to be proactive rather than reactive. We talked about that yesterday a little bit, but I'm not going to allow people's actions towards me. I'm not going to be simply reactive to what they do or say. I'm going to choose to treat them and respond to them in a way that God wants me to respond to them. Number four, I must see myself and others the way that God sees us. And how is that? God sees us through eyes of love and grace and forgiveness. He looks at me like that. He looks at you like that. And it's our responsibility to look at others in the same way that he has to us. Number five, I am responsible for how I respond to those who are difficult. Kind of touched on this earlier with number two, but I have the choice. There will be people, difficult people that we try to lead, difficult people who try to oppose us, difficult people in our lives, professional, personal, business, ministry, that will be very hard to deal with. But we are called to treat them with the love and respect that Jesus has shown us as an example. You and I, we have a choice. Yesterday we were talking about attitudes. We have a choice on how we're going to treat other people. Let's take a look at some of the different types of people that we're going to meet during our leadership, during our lives. There's a bunch of different kinds here, and I'm sure that we've all experienced them in one way or another. So we're going to kind of look at a quick little description of these kind of people, and then some suggestions on how do we deal with these kind of people. It's not always easy, but we're going to look at some insights that will maybe help us understand maybe what they're thinking and why they're acting the way they're acting, and then some ways that we can go about responding to them, leading them, etc. The first person we're going to look at is the critic. Now, this person constantly complains and gives unwanted advice. They always see something wrong with something. They like to pick on you. They like to find the problems here and there. Nothing's ever good enough. There's always something wrong. Their compliment may be, hey, this was great, but. It's like every compliment is followed by a but, where they point at something that says, but this was wrong, this was bad, this I didn't like this. We all have critics. You have critics in your life, don't you? whether it's at church, whether it's in your Sunday school class, your ministry, at work, somebody who's saying, you know, you're doing this wrong. You're failing. You're not doing a very good job here. That was a terrible sermon. That was a terrible lesson. You were wrong on this. We all have critics in our lives. How do we handle the critic? Well, your book lists a number of them. Number one, communicate you care by listening to them, but challenge them to offer solutions. Jennifer talked about this a little bit earlier in her session, but when people come with complaints, we shouldn't just let them get away with just complaining. Ask them, what if you don't like this, well, what would be something better? What's a better solution for this? Don't just come to me with a complaint, but come to me with an idea. Let's try to work together. How can we make this better? My desire is I want to be a good leader. I want this ministry to be successful. I want this business to be successful. And so I'm open for suggestions, but don't just complain. Contribute to the solution here. Warn your top leaders of the poison that these critics may spread through criticism. Because when one person starts to criticize, they start to spread this poison through other people. They may even come to some of your other leaders and complain to them about you. And so you need to warn them about the poison that kind of gets spread by the critic. And then thirdly, ask the critic to be part of solving the problems they bring up. So going along with the very first thing we talked about, not only ask them for solutions, but then also help give them responsibility to help carry out some of those. If the solutions are good, then ask them, hey, okay, let's do this together. You help me accomplish this fix to the problem here. So don't just let them complain. Ask for them to give solutions and then help to carry out those solutions. The second type of person is the martyr. This person feels like the victim and swims in a pool of self-pity. They say, woe is me. They feel like, life isn't fair. They're suffering for Jesus. They feel like that, again, life's not fair. One example, I'm not saying that she was always this way, but in this particular example, she is. And that's the story of Mary and Martha. When Jesus came to visit them, and Jesus came and they're so excited that Jesus is there. And Martha, her response was to start doing stuff to make Jesus comfortable. She's fixing him some food, maybe cleaning up a little bit here, maybe getting him something to drink. And while she's rushing around doing all these things to help Jesus, her sister Mary is just sitting at the feet of Jesus, just listening to Jesus. And Martha gets very frustrated and comes to Jesus and said, Jesus, I'm doing all these things and Mary's doing nothing. Would you tell her to get up and come help me? Martha was feeling like, this isn't fair. I'm working hard and these people aren't, and it's not right. And just woe is me. We all have people like that eventually in the ministries or leadership or whatever that we're leading. How do we deal with people who feel this way? First off is make them aware that attitude is a choice. Help them to see, as we've been talking about right now, even if things aren't fair, you have a choice on your attitude on how you're going to respond to that. When things are hard, you have an option to choose a positive attitude in the middle of that. Secondly, if they are a leader, teach them that a leader is responsible to be up or positive for those that they lead, because people take their attitude, they take their cues from their leaders. And if I, as a leader, if this is my attitude, I work so hard and nobody appreciates me, I don't get paid enough, I have to do all the work and other people don't do anything. If that's their attitude, that's going to affect the people that they're trying to lead, the people in the church, the people in the ministry. We got to make sure our leaders don't have this attitude as well, because people take their cues of their attitude from us. Thirdly, never reward self-pity. Sometimes we feel, well, this person they feel so bad. Maybe if I give them a special award or an honor or a position or something that make them feel important, don't do that, because you're just going to continue to reward bad attitudes, and that will increase more of that same bad attitude. Let's look at number 3, the wet blanket. This person is always pessimistic and is a drain on the relationship. They're a whiner. They're a complainer. When you want to try and make a change or do something different, we've tried it before and it didn't work there. Just because it worked there doesn't mean it's going to work here. We tried that before. They're a complainer, and they're always finding something to whine and complain about. They're looking at the negative. We think about when Moses led the Hebrews to the edge of the promised land, There was the land that God had promised them for the taking, that God had promised, okay, I'm going to give that to you again. And they sent out the 12 spies. You remember the story, and they looked at the land. They came back, even brought back some of the fruit of the land, and they gave a report, and 10 of those spies said, oh, the land is great, it's wonderful, but there's giants that live there, and they're going to crush us. We can't do this. We're too insignificant. The land is great, but it's not worth it. People like that are in our ministries. They're going to see the plans that we have. They're going to hear the plans. They're going to hear the vision of the mission. And they're going to say, but no, what about this? What about that? We can't do this. How do we deal with people like that? First off, we need to be honest with them about how they're acting. Do you realize what you're saying? Do you realize what you're doing? Do you remember the God that we serve? Do you remember what God has done for us in the past? Do you think that this attitude is the attitude of a Christ-like person? Is this what a Christian should be like? Is this what God has called us to be? Be honest with them about their attitude, but also, yes, you bring up some serious points, and we're taking those seriously. Next, don't expect them to change as long as they offer excuses. Don't let them keep offering excuses. Again, ask for solutions, ask for new ideas. Point to past successes that they thought would fail. Oh, remember when God helped us with this? Remember when God did this miracle in our church? Do you remember how this happened? Do you remember how God helped you in your life when it seemed like there was no way out? Remind them of the great God that they serve. That's what Joshua and Caleb tried to do. When the 10 spies were saying, but look at all the bad stuff. Joshua and Caleb said, but yes, but think about who brought us this far. Think about the mighty God who goes with us. And so obviously the person has a choice to make whether they're going to agree with that or not, but we need to confront them with the reality of the God who's been with us and what he can do and will continue to do. And also, don't let them dampen your enthusiasm. We have plans, we have this vision, this mission from God, things are coming together, we're excited, and then this wet blanket comes in, and if we're not careful, they can just smother our enthusiasm. They can just make us think, oh, this is not going to work. Everybody feels this way. That's not the truth. Don't let them take away your enthusiasm, your positive attitude. Don't focus on them. Focus on the God who brought you this far and will continue to take you forward. Let's look at next, number 4. This is the steamroller. This person rolls over others and enjoys intimidating people. They're aggressive and can be hostile. Do you know somebody like this? They want their way. They think that they know better than you. They think they know what's best. They want to be in charge. And if somebody says no, they use their force of personality, loud voice, power, whatever they have, and they're just going to run over the top of you. They don't care who gets hurt in the process. They want their way. They want things to do it the way that they want to do it. We've all experienced these kind of people at some time in our ministry, and we will continue to experience people like this. They're intimidating, they're aggressive. What do we do about them? The first thing is, I hate to put it up here, but it's really true, because we need to consider the influence that they have before we act. Many times these steamrollers, they have influence, they have power. They have gotten this by their force of their personality, by their aggressive manner, but some of them have a lot of influence. And so if you're gonna go against the steamroller, realize that there be a cost there. It may be a cost in money, maybe a cost in respect or influence or whatever, but you need to think about, okay, going against this person, I can just give up and just walk away. And they're going to continue, and there's going to be a cost. You're going to need to decide, is this battle going to be worth the cost? Try to reason with them, expose them to their insensitivity. Well, I'm hoping that, specifically if we're talking about the church context, that this person, even though they're a steamroller, they're still a Christian, that they still at least have a desire to follow God and to be Christ-like. So it's important to help them to see through other people's eyes what their attitude and their actions look like. Help them to see, you're so focused on accomplishing what you want to accomplish that you're stepping on people, you're crushing people, you're hurting people along the way. And Jesus calls us to be people of love, and what you're doing is far, far from love. You're hurting people. So many times these people who are steamrollers, they get their focus on something, and they don't even realize half the time what they're doing to accomplish that. They're just running over people. They don't even realize it. Sometimes they just need people to stop them and say, do you realize what you're doing? Do you realize the broken bodies, the broken hearts, the hurt people that you're leaving in your wake? Try to reason with them, try to help them see what they're doing. Identify the issue they are pushing for or against. Sometimes, sometimes people respond in aggressive manners to something that you think, wow, what's the big deal here? It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but sometimes there's underlying issues that really are impacting their actions and their attitude. What is it that you don't like here? You need to ask them. What do you want to have happen? Is what you don't like is you don't like the decision? Do you not like the direction we're going? Do you not like the fact that we're doing this without your leadership? That you're not in charge, so you don't want it to happen? What is the real issue here? What's the problem? And then take a stand when it clearly is an obvious right and wrong issue. Again, there's going to be a cost. We need to think about, is this just an opinion issue? Can I compromise here? Or is this a right and wrong? A yes or no? There's no middle part. You need to make that decision. And if this is a right and wrong issue, an issue of righteousness, of holiness, of something that God's word commands, then you cannot step back. You cannot compromise. You need to stand up to this person as best as you can. Number 5, the garbage collector. The garbage collector. This person surrounds himself, herself with negative people. They gossip and they spread rumors that poison. It's so interesting how garbage collectors, they collect all the bad stuff. They collect the rumors, they collect the gossip, and then they distribute it. They spew it out. And it's interesting how they go about doing this. In the church, we're so sneaky about how we gossip because we know gossiping is wrong, but we're kind of sneaky because we'll get up or we'll speak up in our prayer meeting or in our prayer group or our small group or whatever, say, we really need to pray for Brother James. He's having an affair with his secretary. We need to pray for him. Or we need to pray for Sister Jocelyn, who is, she's been drinking, and she's having some problems there. We're just gossiping. We're just putting it in the context of prayer requests. We're not really so concerned about praying for these people. We just want to let people know, hey, I know the dirt on these people, and they're just dragging them down. Seems like every church has one or more garbage collectors, gossips who spreads the bad stuff around throughout the church. There's some things that, and this is especially damaging if a leader does this. The leader gets involved in being involved in passing along rumors and gossip. What are some ways to handle the garbage collector? First, confront them with the people about whom they are talking. If they're spreading rumors about somebody, put them in the same room with this person and talk it out. Let them see, number one, is this gossip, is this rumor even real, and is it true? Then how is it impacting this person? Because of the words that they're saying about them, how is it impacting this other person? Challenge their statements with objective truth. You say this, but this is the truth. What you're doing is lying. Allow exposure to destroy their credibility. When you confront people about the lies that they tell, or even if they're not lies, even if they're hurtful truths, when you confront people with the truth, or what the truth of that what they're saying is a lie, or the truth of what they're doing to people, how it's destroying people's lives, how it's bringing division in the church, how it's bringing problems. As people see that the damage that they do, then they'll lose their credibility. People will stop listening to them. We have to help our people understand that they don't have to listen to people who are spreading rumors and gossiping. They can say, no, I don't want to hear this. They can stand up for the person and say, hey, I know Brother John, that's not his character, that's not his integrity. I know him, I don't believe you. I think, I'm going to check with him. We need to stand up for people. And even if it is true, you can say, yes, I know that's true, but stop telling people. I don't want to hear about it. That's hurtful. We need to train our people to stop gossip, to stand up for one another, and to stop the garbage collector from spewing out the poison. expose these people to the church leaders and warn of what's happening. Your leaders need to know what these people are doing so they can take steps to stop that, stop him or her from doing that. Number 6, the control freak. This person is unable to let go and trust both God and people. They have to be in control. Sister Jennifer earlier was talking about, allowing people to, giving people authority and responsibility and letting them take it. As leaders, we have to be in control of everything. Well, this person, this control freak, they want to be in charge of everything. They want to make every decision. They want to be in charge of everything. And whether this is a leader or not a leader, this is very dangerous. The control freak, they lack trust, they lack faith, they lack trust in other people and in God. They feel that in order for something to be successful or something to be done right, that they have to be the one that does it. Now, an example of the control freak is Sarah, a wife of Abraham. You know the promise that God made to Abraham and Sarah. He said, "From your descendants, I will make a great nation." And in order to have descendants, you obviously have to have at least one child. And Sarah and Abraham had no children, and they were getting very old. And Sarah decided that she was going to take things into her own hands. Obviously, God can't handle this on his own. We're old people, so I'm going to kind of give God a hand here since he can't do it. And so she sent her maid to go in and sleep with her husband. And this maid became pregnant, and her name was Hagar, and she gave birth to Ishmael, a son. Well, we all know the story also that then Sarah got pregnant and gave birth to a son. And from that time, even to today, Ishmael was the father of what we call Islam, Muslims. And since those early days, the Jews and Christians have been at war with Muslims. What would have happened if Sarah would have just left her hands off and said, "God, I trust you on this"? But she had to be in control. She needed to do what she thought needed to be done because God couldn't handle it. Well, that's what we're talking about. We have people like that in our churches, whether that's you or me or people that we lead. Whoever it is, it's very dangerous. It's a bad thing to have, this lack of trust in people, lack of trust in God. Ways to handle people like that: don't give them highly visible positions of authority, because people do what people see, and people with visible positions of authority, people look at them as role models. And if these people feel like they have to be in control of everything, they don't have a faith in God, they don't have faith in people, then they're going to start taking on that same attitude themselves. So you don't want to give these kind of people visible leadership responsibilities. You want to remind them of scriptural commands to trust God and trust others, that they are not God, that God is God, and God is in control. God is in charge here. They have to realize that. We need to communicate that control is a myth. No human is ever really in control of life. God is the only one that's in control. We need to review with them the many times that God came through and provided for them in the past. Because of their lack of faith, they hesitate to rely upon God to come through with his promises, to do what he said he's going to do. That's why they step in. But we need to help them remember what God has done for them in the past, what God has done for us in the past, that God is faithful. He's trustworthy. You can trust that he's going to do what needs to be done. Number 7, this is the maverick. This person frustrates others by living in their own world. They're oblivious to the needs of others and the big picture. They're self-centered. They want things done their way. They take pride in going against the status quo, against the rules. They like change, even just for change's sake. They want things to be different. They don't want to do things just because it's been done that way in the past. They like new changes. They want it to be. They don't like to stick within the what we call the box. Ways to handle the maverick: don't evaluate your leadership by the maverick's response, because oftentimes mavericks, their automatic response is, "I don't like it. I disagree. It won't work," because they want things to be done differently. They want to do things out of the box. And so don't base your own self-esteem on your leadership based on them constantly disagreeing with you. You might get the feeling that man, this person's always disagreeing with me. Am I that bad of a leader? Just because they're constantly disagreeing with you does not make you a bad leader. They disagree with everybody. Don't put them in a team ministry position where they're going to need to lead other people, because they're going to be leading people away from where you're wanting to go. They're going to be doing their own thing. They tend to march to a different drummer, as they would say. Don't give them a leadership role until they can see beyond themselves. Sometimes Mavericks can be great leaders, but not until they can see how that it's not about them. It's not about what they want. It's about what God is leading the church or the ministry to do. It's about what these people have been called to do. And then when they start to see outside just their own perspective of what they want, and then they can start being a leader. And then discover what motivates them and encourages them, and encourage them to see the bigger picture. What do they really want to see happen here? What's their motivation for even saying something? Are they interested in seeing God's kingdom expand, to see the church or ministry grow and accomplish God's mission, or they just want to cause problems, or they just want to disagree? Find out what's their motivation and listen to them. Mavericks, some of them have some of the most amazing creative ideas because they're not thinking about how we've always done it. They're not thinking about what people will say. They're just looking at new ways of doing things. And sometimes their ideas are totally unrealistic and you can't do it. But sometimes they have great ideas. And even if their ideas are unrealistic, sometimes their ideas will spark an idea that is more realistic. But Mavericks, if you can help them see that we're trying to accomplish what God wants for us here. This isn't your own private little project. Get them on board. Maybe they'll never become a leader in the sense of leading people and being a public spokesman for what you feel God's wanting you to do, but they can be a creative spark. They can give you input. They can give you a different perspective. Because, to be honest with you, sometimes we as leaders, we do get in ruts. We keep doing the same thing the same way year after year after year. And our societies are changing. The needs are changing of people. And we have to change to be relevant. And sometimes we're really slow to do that. But these Mavericks, sometimes they can help us think about, oh, what about this? What about that? So don't let them run crazy, but find ways that you can take their input and channel it in good directions. Number 8, the backstabber. This person is irrepressibly two-faced and hypocritical. They use people for what they want. Their support changes based on who's popular at the time. They make you think that they are your friend, that you're their friend, and then behind your back, they're trying to pull you down to destroy you. Don't you just hate it when people stab you in the back? Isn't that terrible when you really think that somebody cares about you, when somebody's your friend and yet they stab you in the back? Well, what are some ways to handle the backstabber? Well, I know the initial response for many people is this. They just want to strangle them. But obviously that's not the proper response. And so we need to try to not give in to that temptation. Let's look at some realistic things. We need to meet with them and communicate your desire to trust them. They need to know that, yeah, you want to be able to work alongside them, but because of what they've done, because of the ways that they have betrayed you, that it's really hard for you to trust them. They will obviously probably deny that they've done any of this to you. And that's why it's important to gently confront them with specific examples of their hypocrisy. You did this in this situation. You did that in this situation. You told me this, but then you told others this. They need to have somebody confront them with what they're doing, so that they know that you know what they're doing. Bring in other people, involve others who have experienced their two-faced ways for concrete evidence. I saw you do this. This person has seen you do this. You told me this. You told them that. So they need to know and you need to confront them. Don't give them authority until you see them change their ways. Trust is easily lost, and it takes a while for them to build that back up. Don't just okay, I believe you, you're in charge, I'm going to trust you. Make them prove themselves over a time period. Number 9, the cold shoulder. This person disengages and avoids conflict or contact whenever, especially when they disagree with you. If they're easily offended, they pout if they don't get their way. A biblical example of this is from the story of the prodigal son. We know the story. The younger brother asked for his part of the inheritance, went off. He spent it all in bad living, realized that he'd have a better life just being a servant of his father's. Comes back. His father greets him, is so excited that he's back. He throws him a big party. He gives him a robe and a ring, and they're having a big party. And meanwhile, the older brother, he's outside pouting because the younger brother is getting all this. The father goes out, "What's wrong, my son?" And he goes, "Well, this younger son of yours has gone and wasted all this money, and he's come back after this horrible life, and you welcome him back, and you throw him a party. You won't even let me have a little party with my friends." Here he is. He's looking and he's going, "It's not fair. I'm just going to avoid things. I'm just going to stay out here. Don't want to be involved." We have people like this, that we lead. Some people, they get in our faces, they explode. Other people, they get away from us, they ignore us, they avoid us because they don't agree with what we're doing or what has happened. And so their way of responding to making their disagreement known is by avoiding us. What are some ways to handle the cold shoulder person? First, don't reward childish behavior by running after them each time they distance themselves. Every time they're going off pouting, they'll go running after them. But at the same time, do meet with them and ask if you've done something to hurt them. What is happening here? Have I hurt you? Have I offended you? Because again, we talked about taking responsibilities for our relationships. Obviously, if we've hurt somebody, if we've offended somebody, we need to make that right. And so we need to find out from that person, is there something wrong, and make it right if we can. So we want to meet with them if possible. And then dig deep to discover the real issue that causes them to avoid you. Is it because of this decision? Is it because of something else? Find out. Just don't assume that you know why they're avoiding you. Don't assume that, but go and talk to them and find out what exactly is going on, if there's something you can do about it. Number 10, the volcano. This person builds steam and often erupts. They are explosive. They're unpredictable. They can be unapproachable. We all, I'm sure, have experienced people like this, where something happens, a decision is made or something's done, and they just erupt. They just explode. And many times they explode in public. They make a very public scene that they're not happy with what's going on, and they want people to know it. And they show their disagreement by anger. How do we manage? How do we work with people like this? First off, we need to remove them from the crowd. When they're exploding, they're wanting this to be a public thing. We don't want it to be a public thing. Get them away from the crowd where they're not putting on a show for everybody else. It's just the two of you, so that you can work things out. Secondly, remain calm. Ask them to sit down. Ask them to repeat details to be clear on the issues. Why are you upset? What's wrong? Is it a decision? Is it a person? Why are you so angry? Again, don't just assume you know why they're exploding. Find out. Sometimes people's response to something is way more than it should be based on the issue. And sometimes people are not exploding because of that specific issue. It's, as they would call it, it's the little stick that broke the camel's back. That's just the one little thing that tipped them over. So find out, what are you so upset about? Give a soft, clear answer. When somebody is yelling at you, our natural, for many of us, our natural response is to yell right back. But if we yell back, what is their response to us? Yell louder. And so we need to respond by de-escalating, by giving a softer answer, a calmer answer. And it's proven that when you respond with less aggression, then it will cause them to be less aggressive, to be less angry, to bring their tone down as well. Proverbs 15:1 says, "Soft answer turns away wrath." So I know the tendency and the temptation is when somebody's screaming at you is to scream right back. So we don't like people screaming at us. But that's not the way to be able to respond, not to be able to bring a solution to this. And then hold them accountable. You know, when people explode, sometimes they don't mean to. They haven't learned ways to control their anger. They haven't learned ways to disagree in a more calm manner. They haven't learned how to keep their temper under control. And so sometimes they don't even mean to do it. Sometimes they don't realize what effect their explosions have on people, have on the church, have on their witness. Help them to see that this is not something that God wants for them or from them, and then hold them accountable for that. Because so that if they explode again, remind them, remember, that wasn't the way that we're supposed to respond. This isn't what God calls us to do. Help hold them accountable to respond in more of a Christ-like way. Number 11, the sponge. This person is constantly in need, but gives nothing back. They use people. They call at all hours. They often feel lonely. They feel unloved. They want your time. They want your attention, and they will take as much as you will give. They'll just suck you dry if you let them. How do we handle the sponge? First, we need to set limitations on your ability to help. Set limitations on when that you will accept phone calls from them. Set limitations on when you'll let them come and visit you at your home or at your office. Don't allow them to completely monopolize your time and your attention and your energies. Set limitations and then stick to that. If you set limitation that, okay, I'm not going to take your phone call after 7 o'clock at night, and they call you at 8 o'clock at night, don't take their phone call. Don't accept them to come and see you. Set the limitations and then stick to it. Don't let them manipulate you or the situation, because sponges are great manipulators. They'll say, but pastor, but leader, don't you care about me? If you cared about me, you would talk to me. If you loved me like Jesus said you're supposed to love me, you would do this. If you really were a holy person, you would do this for me. If you really, and they just have a way of just piling it on, trying to make you feel guilty, trying to manipulate you to give more and more and more. Require responsibility from them. Challenge them that maturity means giving as well as receiving. Show them the ways that they take and receive, and help them find ways that they can give so that they are giving, not just taking. And then don't feel obligated or guilty by their demands. Again, you need to be healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and these people can just suck the life right out of you if you let them. So set your boundaries, stick to them, and don't let them make you feel guilty for not giving into whatever they want. And number 12, the competitor. This person keeps score on everything. They want to beat others and often feel that life is unfair. They feel that others are unfairly rewarded or honored. Winning is important to them because it boosts their self-esteem. If I'm better than you, then I can feel better about myself. If I have more people at my church than you do, then I feel better about myself. If my Central class is bigger than yours, then I feel better about myself. And so this competition, this desire to win, it becomes their compelling motivation. They want to be on top because if they're on top, they feel good. If they're not on top, then they feel bad. How can we help them? How can we respond to them? First off, remind them that a Christian role is to complete others, not to compete with others. We are called to finish the race together, not to knock each other over and try in order to get to the finish line first. We want to help one another. We're not trying to knock each other out. We want to help each other be successful. My goal is not to beat you. My goal is to help you win too. Let them know that keeping score will destine them to a life of misery, because they're not always going to win. There's going to be times that they lose. And if their self-esteem is based on their winning, they're going to be up and down, and that's a miserable way to live. They're never going to be satisfied. And then join them in finding positive ways that their competitive spirit can be used by God. People who have that competitive spirit, if they can be, if that competitiveness can be harnessed in a positive way, well, that's great. I mean, competitive people, they don't let obstacles stop them. They find ways to go around or over or under or through. They want to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. And so if they can help see that it's not a competition with others, but that it's a mission to accomplish God's mission, then you can really get they can really be a great positive influence and help in your church and in your ministry. Before I talk about the general rules, first, I just want to encourage you later to go back and look at these lists of people and those characteristics and think about yourself. Remember at the very beginning, we talked about perspective, and what is your perspective of yourself? And when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And when you look in the mirror, do you see any of these things in your life? Do you see yourself involved in any of these kind of attitudes of the critic or the martyr or the wet blanket who's always pessimistic, or the steamroller who just rolls over, crushes people on their way, or the garbage collector who's taking the negative and spreading it out to hurt others to make yourself look better? How about the control freak who has to be in charge of everything, who has to make every decision, who doesn't even trust God to do what God says he will do? Or the maverick, the person who makes their decisions based on doing the opposite of what everybody else wants to do, doing their own thing. It's my way or the highway. I want to do it this way. Or maybe, are you a backstabber? You tell people one thing, you do something else. Do you act like their friend and then take him out over here? Or maybe it's the cold shoulder that when somebody does something you don't like, you just ignore them. Or maybe it's the volcano where when things don't go your way, you just explode. You make sure everybody knows that you don't like what's going on. And you let everybody know that if you get in my way, I'm going to explode on you too. Or maybe it's the sponge where you just crave attention from people, that you just suck them dry. Or maybe it's the competitor. You want to be the best. You want to be top on everything. And in the process, you crush a lot of people in the process. As you look in the mirror, you need to ask these questions of yourself, but don't stop there. You got to do the next difficult thing, and that is to ask people who are close to you to look at those things and look at you and evaluate you. Ask them, do you see these things in my life? Do you see me responding in these ways? Because many times, as I mentioned earlier, for other people, sometimes they don't even realize these are part of how they respond and act towards people. They're blind to that. Sometimes we need other people to open our blinded eyes, to show us our blind spots and see how we are doing some of these things ourselves and how it's crippling ministry, it's hurting people, and it's hurting ourselves. Lastly, let's look at some general rules when handling people. Some things that we need to keep in mind. Number one, love them as God has loved you. Regardless of how they act, of what they say, whether they stab you in the back, whether they say nice things to you, whether they ignore you, whether they explode on you, we need to love them. Jesus was an expert, obviously, in loving people, whether the person was a sinner or a saint, whether they were poor or rich, whether they were in the in crowd or the out crowd, whether they were an outcast or not, young or old, different personality styles. Jesus could always connect. He could always relate. And regardless of their treatment of him, he could always love them. You look at the 12 disciples that Jesus chose and their different personality styles, their different temperaments, and he's able to work with this group and bring about something pretty amazing. You and I, we need to love people regardless of how they respond, and that love can bring transformation to a team, to a church, to a ministry. Secondly, ask God for wisdom. Pray that God will give you wisdom on how to respond to people, how to react to people. Pray for people to do well. Pray for your enemies, we're told in Scripture. Those people who are treating us badly, pray for them. Ask God, Lord, give me wisdom, please. Help me to know how best to lead. C, stay healthy yourself. Last night we talked about some of these 12 decisions that we need to make, and then we need to affirm them every day. And one of those decisions is about our health. If we're not healthy, we're not going to respond well. We're not healthy physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. If we're hurting, if we're unhealthy, we're going to have a hard time responding in a godly way to these people that really are hard to deal with. Stay healthy yourself. D, do not give special positions to help people get better. We think, oh, if I just give them, if I put them in charge of something, then this will change them. This will help them to stop doing what the bad stuff they're doing and start doing the good stuff. Don't do that. When you do that, you're going to cause conflict and problems and even failure in ministries. And E, be honest with God, yourself, and them. It's okay to respond, to tell God how you feel about something that's so hard, so difficult. Just read the Psalms. David does this throughout the Psalms. He expresses his frustration with people who are trying to hurt him. And he calls down God to destroy them. He's angry, he's frustrated, he's hurt. It's okay to tell God those things. You need to let God know, because as you express those feelings, there's kind of a healing effect to that. You need to express yourself honestly to God. You need to be honest with yourself. Yes, I know that I'm called to love everybody, but I really don't like this person. And I'm really struggling to love this person. You need to be honest about that. Because when you're honest, then you can start taking the steps that you need to take to change those feelings or those thoughts, attitudes towards that person or persons. And then be honest with the people that you're struggling with. And do it in, as they say, speak the truth in love. Your purpose for being honest with them is not to blast them, to make them feel bad for what they've done. It's to speak the truth in love in such a way that it helps bring reconciliation, it helps to bring healing, helps them to start doing things in a more healthy way, healthy for themselves and healthy for the church. Be honest with them, but speak the truth in love. And then F, keep healthy people in leadership. Again, people look to leaders as examples, as how do I live? How do I respond? How do I work? How do I minister? Whatever. They need healthy examples in front of them to be able to learn and to grow and respond. The importance of relationships. Leaderships and relationships, they make me or they break me. So crucial that we understand the importance of healthy relationships and our role in developing healthy relationships with those people that we lead and that we interact with. We've talked about perspective and how our perspective influences the way that we respond to people. We've talked about how we need to be responsible for the relationships in our life. We talked about how we need to take the high road in our interaction with people. Our goal is not to get even or to give them what they gave to us. Our responsibility is to respond with grace and love and truth, just like Jesus did. And regardless of the type of person they are, God can give us wisdom and can help us find ways to be able to respond well, and even to work with some people like this. Relationships. I sure hope that that maybe God has sparked an idea for you tonight. I know that, if you think about people in your life right now who are difficult, I'm sure it doesn't take very long for a name or two or three or a face or two or three to come to your mind. People who are really difficult to get along with, to lead, and maybe going back through this, you can find some ideas that maybe will help you, inspire you, encourage you to not give up, to keep trying. Any questions or comments? I'm sure there probably are. Well, since there's no questions, that either means that you are all asleep, because I can't see most of you because you have your picture, your video off. So either you're asleep or you're off eating supper and just left this on, or I'm such an amazing teacher that I've dispelled any questions or doubts you have. Ryan, I'm surprised you have a question or a comment.
Hi, good night. I love your sense of humor. I just want you to expand a bit on the point you would have made concerning persons. I'm trying to recall the exact personality trait that you would have described, the persons who are disruptive. And you would have made the point that we need to be very conscious of the damage or the repercussions of confronting them in that situation. I would just like to expand on that, because I am wondering if our concern might, in a sense, negate effective action. In other words, we may be so concerned with the damage we could cause by confronting the situation that we allow it to continue. I like the point you would have made about trying to reconcile what issues they may be facing. But I'm also wondering if that person persists, for example, we're using a worst case scenario here, where after a discussion started and you recognize that you have brought before the person, as you would have said, the damage that they're creating in various situations. If that person persists in the attitude where they believe that their way is the right way, how does one deal with the situation after that? Recognizing it as well, that to effectively deal with that person may mean withdrawing them from the ministry and in effect causing repercussions within the body as well. How does one deal with that?
Yeah, and just like I mentioned to one of the questions yesterday, hang on to that, because my session tomorrow, the leader as a coach, building an effective team, we're going to be talking specifically about what do you do with leaders that are part of ministry that you need to find a way to dismiss them from their current responsibilities. How do you respond to them? And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But specifically for right now, though, sometimes we have to make the decision based on what's best for, well, we need to know what's best for the church, for the mission, for the ministry. And if that means hurting somebody to protect them, to protect the ministry, then we have to do that. I think what you were talking about was what we call the steamroller, and about how steamrollers often have a lot of power and influence. And if you try to confront them, if you try to go against them, then they can cause damage for you. They can create problems for you in your leadership, in even the finance. Maybe they're a big giver. Maybe they have influence with other people, and they'll turn other people against you. So realize that when you confront people who have power, there's going to be a cost. Jennifer talked about this last night. There's going to be a cost when you make difficult decisions. There are costs, and just to be fair, we need to think about, is this battle worth the cost? And yes, we cannot allow ourselves to get paralyzed by, what if I lose my job over this? Well, if you remember the last point in how do we handle with them, we say, take a stand when it clearly is an obvious right or wrong issue. If this is a right or wrong issue, you can't give in no matter what the cost is going to be. But if it's something that's not so big of a deal that there can be a compromise, then maybe you can make some more compromises on that. Maybe the cost would be too high to fight. As a parent and as a leader, we're all familiar with, you don't want to win the battle and lose the war. You got to keep a broad perspective of, is this a battle that's worth fighting? Because my goal is not to win this particular battle, it's to win the war, it's to accomplish the mission, to accomplish what God wants us to do. And so, is this worth going to battle over or not? Some things are, no matter what. Other things, they're not worth it. So we need to figure that out on how we're going to approach that. Anybody else?
Thanks for the response.
Okay, thanks.
Monte, there's a question in the chat. Someone is asking, can one person be two of these things?
Oh, I think so. I think that, and I don't think that, I think that we can take on different characteristics in different situations, and with different groups. There are some groups where we may be very aggressive, where we feel like we can be, but there are other, or this person can be very aggressive, and then other groups or situations where they feel like they don't have the power or the respect or the influence to be that aggressive, so they're more of the cold shoulder. I think it depends on the situation, the personality type, but I think that we can display multiple ways of responding to people based on the situation. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, Anderson Brian, you have a question or a comment?
Good night to all. First of all, I must say how much I enjoyed the presentation. It isn't that I'm asleep, but I enjoyed the presentation. Comment. As I sat and I listened to all that you went through in the with the steamroller and that stuff, what automatically comes to mind is the immaturity of the individual, right? In that personality more comes to the fore than what God would have us to do. In that, some people would tell you, well, this is me. I was born like this, and I've been so for all the monkey years and yada, yada, yada. And the passage of scripture always comes to mind. Any man in Christ Jesus is a new creation. All things are past, and behold, all things have become new. So to consistently have these sort of situations arising in the assemblies, it speaks to the immaturity of the individual more so than the problem, in that people are not willing to allow themselves to move past these petty things that, if I may quote unquote call them that, and allow what God would have them to be to really come to the fore. So I look at it from the point of view of somewhat immaturity on the individual's parts. Nevertheless, keep good job, enjoy the session, keep up the good work.
Thank you. And that's a really good point that I don't think I mentioned, is that sometimes people use personality as an excuse. They say, yeah, I explode at people, I run over people, but that's just my personality. I can't control that. Well, that's wrong. That's just an excuse for being mean and cruel and not caring for other people. You don't let them get away with just saying, oh, it's my personality, that's why I'm that way. No, you still have a choice. You still have an option. You can learn to control. You can learn to treat people well. I think that, and we have to hold people accountable. If you are a new creation in Christ, why doesn't it look like it? And help them to grow and learn and mature. Good comments, thanks.
Another comment in the chat from Deborah. You spoke about not being responsible for how others treat you, but yet it is said that you should teach persons how to treat by the way you treat yourself, and also by how you allow a person to treat you. I believe that's for a comment.
Yeah, I think that the point isn't that we don't want to don't try to treat people well. The point is, even if people treat us badly, it may not be because of something that we've done to them. I mean, the people that treated Jesus so badly, he didn't do anything bad to them, but they treated him badly. And so that's kind of my point is, even if you're doing all the right things, you're making all the right decisions, and you're treating people so well, if they treat you badly, you don't hold yourself responsible for that. Don't say, oh, I did something wrong. It's my fault. I failed as a leader because these people are treating me badly. I'm saying you can do everything right and they can still treat you bad. So you're not responsible for all of their actions. You didn't do anything bad because they're doing something bad back to you, being bad to you. It's not your fault. Sometimes we make the wrong decision. Sometimes we do something wrong and people get frustrated at us and they get angry at us and they treat us badly. And that's because of something that we've done. But many times people, as leaders, we're kind of like the acceptable punching bag. When things are going bad, then you can take it out. Like you can go home and kick your dog. If you're having a bad day, well, that's how people look at leaders. If things are going bad, they can go to the church and take it out on their leader there, because they're supposed to be godly people. They're supposed to take it. They're not supposed to respond back to you. And so they kind of see us as a punching bag. And so as leaders, we're gonna get, people are gonna treat us lousy at times, but we can't let that impact us negatively, thinking, you know, I'm a terrible leader because people are treating me badly. I'm making all the wrong choices. Well, no, sometimes people are gonna treat you bad even when you do everything right. Jesus is, again, the perfect example of that. Is that it?
Hi,
Diane?
good night. Yes, please. They say hurting people always hurt other people.
Yep.
So sometimes when people hurting, sometimes they take it out on others, and don't let, some people will not take responsibility for things that they do, or will not take responsibility for things that they're done.
Yep. In fact, that's even in my notes. Hurting people hurt others, and I just failed to mention it. But yeah, and again, that's part of the reason that people hurt us. They're lashing out. The pain that they're feeling, they're lashing out at others, and we're one of the ones that. But when people are doing that, we need to help them recognize what the hurt is in their life and help bring healing. Is that it? Okay. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.